An EQA's role is to review the processes of assessment and internal quality assurance within an approved centre. So an EQA must ensure approved centre staff members are making assessment judgments that are consistent with the qualification, learning outcomes and assessment criteria. To ensure this happens, an EQA will carry out the following activities. When externally quality assuring in a centre, you are making decisions based upon several activities. You'll be observing an EQA and feedback to their assessor. You'll be observing training delivery, assessment practice and feedback to learners. You'll be talking to staff, learners and others such as witness and supervisors in the workplace. You'll be sampling learners' work which has been assessed formatively and summatively and which has not been internally quality assured as well. So there are other activities you can carry out depending upon the situation at the time you have available. So you might be observing a standardization meeting. You might be reading minutes of meetings. You might be looking at induction records, tutorial reviews and evaluation, maybe feedback forms from learners. You might review statistics, such as number of starters and completions, and maybe the amount of time taken between learners starting and completing, and the time taken between learners commencing and being registered with the awarding organisation. So looking at relevant policies and procedures to ensure they're up to date, checking job descriptions and continuing professional development records, and asserting complaints and appeals. So you'll review resources and facilities. So normally when you carry out, these are carried out at the approval stage. So the purpose is to review that the centre has the resources and facilities in place to run accredited training courses to the required standard. So you as an EQA will review the premises designated to run qualifications, including staff and materials used to deliver the course. You'll review centre personnel. So this is arguably the most critical activity, and it's reviewing centre personnel to determine whether they have the knowledge, skills and attitudes to run accredited qualifications in line with the assessment criteria. It is important for the learner experience that staff involved, particularly the training team of assessors and of trainers and IQAs, that they are competent to deliver the training and quality assurance to the required level. You'll also review centre documentation and IQA policies, which may include relevant policies and procedures, including health and safety, data protection, and equality and diversity, to ensure that they meet the legislative and regulatory requirements within their procedures. It's also essential that the documentation is reviewed to determine the expected process to cover all scenarios, including registrations, appeals and complaints, assessment process and confidentiality. EQAs will review the centre's EQA policy to ensure that the assessment activities have been conducted in a consistent, safe and fair manner. You'll also sample EQA reports. So the EQA report will detail all sampling undertaken in sufficient detail to be able to justify the decision made by the centre, and a report should be signed by both the assessor and the EQA. The EQA will review the report to determine whether the actions carried out by the EQA are in line with the EQA policy. So the EQA should sample learners that were sampled to evaluate the decisions made by the EQA, and sample those that are not sampled to determine whether the EQA process is effective and that trainers and assessors are given the appropriate support. You'll also sample initial assessments. So the EQA, you will sample learner and initial assessments to evaluate whether learners have been placed on an appropriate program of study. Sample portfolios. So a key role, as well as of an EQA, is to sample learners' work to ensure that the work meets the learning outcomes. It is the responsibility of the EQA to sample learners' work to ensure that they meet the quality requirements before submitting to the AO for their certificate. The EQA must put in place an effective EQA policy to ensure that the trainers and assessors deliver and mark work based on the assessment requirements, and that an effective sampling strategy is in place to ensure consistency. The EQA will sample portfolios to ensure standards are met and maintained. You'll observe assessments. So EQAs will monitor assessments to ensure that the assessment activity is carried out in line with the assessment requirements. You'll interview with witnesses, learners and staff. So as an EQA, you'll interview witnesses to determine the validity of their observations and are competent to provide a statement. The learners will be interviewed to determine the knowledge learned and to gain feedback about the assessment process. And this is to verify work products. So staff will also be interviewed to understand the methods used to deliver and assess the qualifications. So sample learner feedback. So learner feedback about the course and centre is sampled to get an understanding on the service which was delivered.